what you see here is all these green dots are where there is imagery available publicly through the web page. Oh boy, sorry, I'm not much of a mouse pad person. How do I pan? I gotta hit the button. Oh. Uh-oh. I don't know where I am. I'm trying to get into Anchorage. I might be in Canada or somewhere else. California?
Ryan, you can use the magnifying glass option to type the.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so as you zoom in, you're going to start seeing the individual tracks appear, and then attached to those are going to be the round dots that are the images themselves. Oh boy. There we go. Trying to get to Jewel Lake and Diamond. So this is the section where the road construction project happened. As you zoom in, you start to see the lines appear with the dots connected to them. Each one of those is an image that was captured along that line. And so what I was saying about comparing the images is you just click on one of them, and you get the thumbnail on the side there, and you maximize that thumbnail to the screen, I think. Yep. So that's what the image looks like. This is a 180 image. You can see the paving is going on right now. And you can slide around the image after you've zoomed in. And over here on the side is the time-lapse portion of this. And you want to compare that image to other images that are in the vicinity. And then you just pick one of those images. So I'm going to try to pick one that's maybe a little more advanced construction. I'm not sure which one I'm getting here. So I've chosen that image to compare to. And then you just slide it over, and you can see as the construction has progressed. Both of these are active construction portions of this. Anyway, that's just what I have for you. Just want to demonstrate that real quick. Yeah, good question?
Thanks, Ryan. Just to refresh, I think you said this, you can benefit. So
yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's part of why I wanted to introduce it a little bit. I'm hoping maybe on your way home you fun. Sewer Meridian or a couple projects that involved in amazing.
This just seems almost like no-brainer.
Yes, it is. I mean, application is super easy to use. Like I said, if I want to see it, let me know afterward, and I can introduce you to it.
So you would really appreciate my daily drive.
Absolutely. And I'll show you how to use it. It'd be great, yeah.
So actually, to expand on that, what kind of equipment do you actually need to contribute?
Your cell phone, at a minimum.
I am not a driver.
Well, what I've done is I've mounted it to my windshield. I have a little suction cup, and you mount it to your windshield, and then you hit go. And the application either you can set it to collect once every however amount of time you want it to take it, or it will use your GPS to calculate distance, and it will take pictures at every set distance. So it's you can hit go and then turn the screen off. Actually, that part I'm not sure, but you don't have to be looking at it constantly. I would recommend a second person, but you can do it by yourself. Yeah, it's super simple.
So, quality control, I don't know if this is for you or for me too, but what about all the junk that comes in with crowdsourced collection?
Maybe Bluetooth could answer that better than I
He's probably
could.
tackling that question.
There's a wide variety in there, yeah.
We don't consider anything as junk. So even there might be regions where not many people travel often. So even that information is very valuable to many government agencies because we don't have the resources to go out there and capture those information. So, like in some cases, like when like trails and stuff, there is no way that you're going to use a heavy triple MX7 camera, which is like really heavy to carry and stuff. So in those cases, you might have to use just a cell phone or an action camera. So that is still valuable because the information, it has so much resolution that we can get so much information out of just those imagery. The GPS might be a little off, but you still can get so much information out just to say that, okay, there is something out there to have a documentation and validating those kind of scenarios.
Yeah, and it's not just the imagery itself.
Trying to switch the user back to me, and then up here, I might get that on the screen.
Visually see it, but also the object recognition.
Back to you. You don't think
I'm
it's
trying to-
struggling.
I think we're gonna turn this maybe over to Aaron,
Big
to
enough.
talk a little bit.
Sounds
Jeff,
good.
you ready?
It's a little high. Change relative.
I'll pull your slides up in a second. Oh, you gonna hook your own?
Yeah, I can do that. I've got yeah,
Okay.
HDMI, yeah.
You gotta get this figured out. Did anyone know how to switch this?
The laptop.
Decided that's what we wanted to emulate, was Google Street View. And looking at their list, we ended up coming up with this camera here. This is the Insta360 Pro 2. It's a 12K resolution, 360 spherical camera. It's got 6 lenses in it, and each put together and end up stitching up images. So, and ultimately, we decided for Mapillary, of course, for hosting the imagery. What we were looking for was something that could integrate into our existing ArcGIS web app implementation and just show up as another layer. So you can see here, this has got a threaded mount on the bottom of it. We just threaded into the bottom of it an adapter plate so it could mount on a survey range pole. We just strapped it to the rack on the back of the truck. Real high-tech solution there. So some of the problems we ran into is that camera's not waterproof. I know it never rained this summer in Alaska.
Kidding me.
But the camera's not waterproof, so it never rained so much. That's no problem. Another problem we ran into was, I know you guys aren't going to believe this, but trains run on those train tracks. And the truck, and the train can't be on the same track at the same time. It just doesn't work. The speed was a big problem for us. This camera will only increment shots every 2 seconds. You can only take one image every 2 seconds. It'll do video, but with using video, you lose some of the resolution. So we wanted the highest resolution possible. So we wanted pictures every 50 feet. We figured that was the reasonable spacing. So when you do the calculation, it means we can only travel at 15 miles an hour. My intern collected 525 miles of track at 15 miles an hour. Something else was data storage. As we talked about, we needed removable storage. The camera came with 64 meg cards for each of the cameras. The intern determined that lasts about 2.5 hours. So we ended up picking up a set of 128 cards, thinking that'd be better, and then that wasn't enough. So we ended up with the 64 set and 2 sets of 128s. And then we had to download, whatever that is, 6 cards worth of, 12 cards worth of 128 every night to get fresh, ready, going next morning. The software that the camera comes with needs network connectivity. And for whatever reason, the security implementation on the work laptop did not allow it to connect to the hotel Wi-Fi. So he would finish his 14-hour day and then need to drive back to a railroad network to be able to download the data. He was real happy about that part. So, what did it cost? That's kind of what my big question was at the beginning. I told work that I needed 75 grand to get this done because I had no clue. I just made a guess. And so I came in well under the 75 grand mark. It was 5 grand for the camera. We spent almost 20 grand collecting imagery, 525 miles for the truck rental through the railroad to drive on the rails, a driver for the truck and my intern to process the imagery. 2 weeks, 525 miles, about 20 grand. Mapillary for the use of their widget to plug into your web doc builder charges 4 grand a year, plus the hosting of the imagery. If the imagery is publicly available imagery, the hosting is free. We wanted our imagery to not be publicly available, so Mapillary charges for hosting the imagery. You can see here on the right-hand side, there is a cost breakdown. It's varied by number of images. We ended up with about 70,000 images for an image every 50 feet for 525 miles. And the hosting ends up to about $9 grand a year for us. And then there's an initial one-time setup fee of $1,650. So this is kind of one of the areas that we got to collect some 360 imagery on. We did not drive a train down that track. We just decided that maybe we could do that bit on foot. So that's that. Let's go take a look here for a minute and some stuff. So here we go. We've got the web app builder application. You can see here we've got our railroad mileposts along there. This is just kind of a basic viewer. But this button here is for the widget. There we go. You can see where we're at there. Here in Anchorage. So you can kind of see we're over, I don't know if you guys have been down by like the rail yard and whatnot, but they're putting in those new condos just across the street kind of from 49th State. And where the new 49th State building is, they're putting a new road in there and doing some other stuff. So we went and had the intern go and collect imagery. So you can kind of see here, just, you know, look around, there's what it looks like. And go, there's my intern, he was there collecting imagery. But you can step through the imagery. Yeah, so if you want to zoom in on the imagery, it'll jump up in resolution a little bit. But basically, we wanted a viewer to be able to look at our imagery in a kind of 360 manner so that we don't have to send high-paid engineers to go up and just drive and go look at something. So, you know, if you can save 3 hours of drive time one way on an engineer's salary, you know, pretty quickly, this thing can start paying for itself. So one of the other things that my intern did, he's in a high-density laser scanner class at university right now currently. And he's like, hey, we did some stuff with photogrammetry last year to be able to pull the point clouds. So this is going to be real similar to what Mutu was showing. So this is just from our 360 imagery. You can see here, same sort of thing. It's just in Web App Builder again. Hopefully that's feedback. But as you can see, we got a as you can see, we've got a 360 point cloud that was generated just from the 360 images he took just by walking around with the camera. The software he used for that was Aegisoft Metashape. He said that this was able to be done with the standard version. You can see it's less than $200 for the standard version. Something else we had, Ryan was showing off the time-lapse imagery. Here we go. This is from the fire that was south of Talkeetna. You can kind of see, we took imagery in May, and then we came back and looked again. They wanted to run the imagery before they cleared the trees after the fire had gone through. Anyway, that's what I got. Is there any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Doug.
You did the whole stretch of railroad.
The question was, did we do the whole stretch of the railroad? Yes, we did.
And then how long do you plan to just do that periodically, or what?
So this was the initial test phase of it. I think, you know, we still got some bugs that we're trying to work out before we roll it out to everybody, and then it'll just kind of, you know, if anybody's using it sort of thing, we'll determine how frequently, you know, they decide that they need it redone.
And this is available, all this is layered into your GIS, or whoever's got a GIS access?
Yeah, that's going to be the plan is, you know, currently right now we just have the viewer here that just our mileposts on it right now, but the thought is that it'll be integrated into our regular web map that I've been showing here before that kind of shows everything that the railroad owns that everybody uses.
Do you think that you guys will be able to make this public, or is it more you can't do that because of infrastructure safety and stuff?
So the question was, are we going to be able to make it public? And so far from what I've been told by the railroad is they don't want to make it public. Maybe in a couple of years once the imagery is a little older. I think part of the concern is that if the FRA has an easy way to go inspect our rail for violations. They might have an intern with nothing better to do than to go find violations that they wouldn't otherwise find and be able to fine us, is what the reasoning was explained to me.
Have you gotten anything from them as far as a funding partner that they're interested in this kind of thing for various funding purposes, or?
The question was, have we gotten any interest from them as far as being a funding partner? You're referring to them being the FRA?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we haven't mentioned it to them or talked to them at all about it. This is kind of just an in-house thing that we did on our own. Go ahead. So the question was, how long did it take us to do it? And it took us 2 weeks. 2 weeks of, 6 days a week, 14-hour days sort of thing. So a long 2 weeks, but yeah.
All right, great. Thanks, Aaron.
When you're ready. Set it on YouTube.
And now what are we showing? My desktop. Okay.
Did you not think of it?
You want to help me with the audio? We got one up first. Me? Gotcha. So, that's on me.
Pick that up off the floor so we can trip it. It's just me.
This works. Okay, we got a.
It's on mute. It's on mute, Mike. It's on mute. There's a button that says mute.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
Perfect.
My name is Mike Knapp. I'm the GIS analyst for the municipality of Anchorage. Typically at these types of meetings, who you see here is Tina Miller, our geographic information officer, but she is currently at a pool in Florida. So I got to hand the baton. Our group is referred to as the Geographic Data and Information Center, or GDIC. There's 3 of us. Amber Jackson is the 3rd person in our group. I believe as of this morning now, it's the first time I've been here, but I believe Amber has been here in the past as well. So, our job of GDIC is to manage the enterprise GIS deployment for the municipality of Anchorage. We have 2 primary data access points. One is our organizational ArcGIS online account, and then we have an internal enterprise portal GIS that's only accessible on municipal machines. So our job is to be the data managers, data designers, kind of web app developers. But primarily, we interface with the municipal departments to kind of coordinate their data sharing and their editing needs, and then we try to push that information out to other municipal departments. And if you haven't seen it already, here's a link to our GDIC homepage. We use Esri
how to manage that. It's kind of our main interface to interactive maps. Provides access to over 15,000 PDF maps for download, over 70 GIS data sets, primarily in the geodatabase format, but also in shapefiles and occasionally KML as well. I think we're slowly phasing out KML distribution. And we also have over 200 public feature services available in ArcGIS Online. Most of these are updated on a daily or weekly basis automatically through a scripting process. So our goal is to make sure that people have access to the most current information and that it's relatively easy to access. We just want to make sure that everybody has access to the same data. So, for example, if our planning department handling land use information, they want to edit the data. We all know government, public agencies tend to be understaffed, overworked. So they might have a short-term deadline on a project. The tendency, I think in a lot of places, is for somebody to come in, do some quick edits, print some maps, and then kind of forget that other people within the municipality actually might want access to the GIS data. So one of our goals is to make sure we don't inadvertently silo data in some department somewhere. And that is something that we are constantly, and I think most people are probably constantly dealing with, trying to make sure that some authoritative data set does not get embedded on somebody's desktop or in a departmental file system somewhere. So as mentioned, our goal is to share our data not only between municipal departments but also to the public. And we also try to use other people's data where we need to. One of my career goals as a GIS analyst is to edit as little data as possible and to use other people's data because it's a lot easier to use other people's authoritative data. So I'll go through some of these in a little bit. But I also wanted to mention that I think the role of kind of a public organization that makes your data publicly available is not only to kind of indicate somewhere that your data is the authoritative data set, but it's also to make sure that there aren't kind of these wildcat data sets out there. You need to kind of always monitor that. And I think of the early days of ArcGIS Online when everyone was so excited to have it. A lot of people have logins, organizational logins for ArcGIS Online, and it was very easy to publish hosted feature layers. And you had a lot of people within organizations publishing multiple versions of feature layers, and some of those are still out there. So when you do a search for data, it can be really hard, especially if that person is well-meaning in a public agency. They have a logo next to their name, and it looks really authoritative. It can, I think it really is the job of the data managers for an organization to make sure that you monitor that and that you also make available some authoritative data set. We try as often as we can to use just the green authoritative tag on our feature services, but man, that's easy to forget. Just like band data, right? It's easy to forget to do that stuff. It's really important. A couple examples here, and I'll turn it over. All right. So one example of data sharing, the municipality passed a ordinance to kind of expand the areas where trapping is not allowed within the municipality of Anchorage. It passed in May. Basically, our job is to make sure that we have a GIS layer that indicates the areas where you are not allowed to track. So obviously the basis for using this is to grab fish and game's existing data for no trapping area. And we also needed the, to me, it's just like a line on a map, and you wouldn't think it would be hard. but it is so hard. Like, not only are there is there the legislatively designated area, but there are also all these managed agreements that seem to be rather dynamic. So it's really hard to generate kind of a static boundary. But the no trapping areas are very dependent on the Chugach State Park boundary, especially in the Cluton area. So that has been an interesting dynamic for us. So not only, so here's, I guess my second thing is, when you're looking for authoritative data, I'll go to the organization and just double check. I know that GIS people tend to be rather introverted, and when we find something that looks really good on the internet, we tend to use it, but don't be afraid to call people and ask, so you don't kind of think it's up in the corner. It's the municipality is going to have liability. We publish a map that shows that you can or can't trap in an area where you can or can't trap, or can or can trap. And our area is actually still under review. So. Another example, data sharing. We produce maps for the Anchorage Police Department and Fire Department that show the locations of assisted living facilities, as well as members of a registry called the Vulnerable Population Registry in the municipality. And if you are on the Vulnerable Population Registry, that just puts you on a list to get a visit from emergency services during some municipal-wide emergency. The state manages the assisted living facility homes database. They make that available through an Excel spreadsheet. So every week, on a Sunday, we have a script that goes out and downloads the Excel spreadsheet. It kind of parses out the addresses into the format that matches our municipal addressing format, and then we geocode them, and then we have a set of map books that's updated. So that is updated on a weekly basis. But at this point, I'm going to exit.
Yeah. So update weekly, right? So to talk about this for a second about the update process. So you don't do so when you do an update, how much update actually is happening on a weekly basis? How do you think about doing that?
So we have the framework for our map book that just kind of sits there. This is actually in an ArcMap MXD document. So what the process that occurs every week is going to the State of Alaska website, downloading the Excel spreadsheet, and then parsing out the addresses, and then updating a data layer of the assisted living homes.
So you're parsing out the delta change.
Actually, we're just rebuilding it every time.
Rebuilding it every time. Okay. Oh, a different camera? No.
So, Mike,
Yes.
question on that one. In an ideal world, would they create an active feature service that was secured for your access, and you could just get that?
I don't know if it's ideal, but it would be super cool for us. Once we have the process in place, to me, downloading an Excel spreadsheet, that seems like a really fragile thing, because Excel spreadsheets are really easy to tweak in a way that your scripting process won't be happy with.
Well, and it just seems like you guys have a nice model that other communities have done. There's their own emergency program.
All you have to do is plug it in.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, and then at that point, they might be more interested.
Right. Yeah, and sometimes we will reach out and try to have those discussions.
Needs a salute.
with people, but sometimes the department is just like the licensing department. They're not necessarily interested in kind of the explicit geographic location. They're just trying to manage their licensing.
Thank you, Mark. More safety hazards on the floor. All right, hi, I'm Eric Wyatt at from Matthew Borough. I think I know most of you, but there might be a couple that we haven't met yet. So we have shown to this group some of the data that we have online in the past. And so today what we want to do is a little update. And I guess I'm pretty excited about this particular forum today, because we started out this forum with kind of a what do you have, what do you want, what do you need kind of a attitude, and look at how it's working. You know, we've all been working together and we've been putting data sets online, and now we're starting to share those data sets, and it's really paying off. So I think it's a wonderful thing that we're doing, and it's working. So first slide here, Doug told me that I should get everybody to stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. So, well, we won't do that. So what I wanted to do is show you not just the ArcGIS data sets that are online, but kind of all of the data the Matsu Borough makes available. Of course, as a local government agency, our data belongs to the public, so we want to turn around and make that data available to the public as easy as we can. So what we're looking at here is, this is our main website. This picture actually changes pretty frequently, but as it is showing some of the data that's available, some of this is structured data, a lot of it's unstructured data, some of it are just web pages that's got some information on it. But as you see here, we've got election results. So we had an election just this week, so we put the results up right away. The band across the top there is some air quality. So that helps some of our citizens looking at the air quality. And then this list of icons are some of the kind of the big heavy hitters of what people like to look at when they come to our website, the information that they're looking for. So you can see assembly, animal shelter, central landfill, code compliance, contract opportunities, e-commerce, my property, parcel viewers, swimming pools, and taxes. So those are kind of the big heavy hitters for what we look at. If you click on our website there, a little more information. Here's like all of the different pages that you can get to quickly. And again, this represents a lot of pages, structured data, and some unstructured data. Okay? If we start popping through the menus at the top of the website over here, what we've done is we've highlighted the portions that will take you to various forms of data here again. And so just going to pop through these things, but you can see going from menu to menu to menu. There's just an awful lot of data that the borough creates, maintains, and then exposes back to the public. One of the more popular bits of data that we have is what we call our My Property. So, you know, what do our borough citizens most interested in? Well, what about my house, my property, and what are the appraisals, and what are the taxes on that? So, one of those menu items takes you right to this screen. This is live data, so this is pulling right from the live data source, and then from here we can get to tax maps and to some other great tools that we've got available. Just the next map over there again, the next menu, lots more data available. And then as we look at our website and we see what are the top pages from those websites that are used, we can see here which ones are most popular. So again, My Property is way over here on the left side. That's got the highest usage of all of the pages in there. The color coding here show you that the green are data-driven pages. And then the kind of the yellowish is uses data, and then the red ones are no data, just page information. So you kind of see there that what people are coming to the borough website to look for is very highly data-driven. Okay? Going back to our menus and looking specifically at the open data. Okay? So this takes us to our ArcGIS Online portal for open data. And so the main site is here, and then you can just look at our data. So this is live data that's available for you to go in and create maps from. Is here, and behind these icons, 37 different data sets. I don't remember how many of those were available last time. I think Kenny did this presentation on this, but there's a great number of additional ones available since then. Okay? And then also on that site, you can get to all of these apps. And so we have a number of apps that we also make available, and they are using some of our own data there. We're using quite a bit. And maybe Kenny could point out how many of these are not just our data, but are using other data sets as well, so, of that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like the Matthews Trails and Parks, so the ones that aren't brand new, like the MSP, as an example, are not our applications, but they're valuable enough to us to display and open data. So it's basically going along with the branding helps us to differentiate. But a lot, depending on the applications, like our LRTP, we are pulling some of the state's data for, and so it kind of just depends on per project. But yeah, a lot of it we. Yeah, what we can do, like kind of Mike said, is that we prefer to pull from the authoritative source. We do not like to recreate anything if we don't have to, and if it's coming from like the DOT or from the state or from DNR, then that is the authoritative source. So you don't have to rehost it or anything. We just grab your guys' service and go with it. So it's definitely on the route we're taking as well. We don't want to be in the business of copying and rehosting data.
Yeah, so there again, just the sharing of data is just wonderful, and it's very useful, of course, to our users. Some of the things that are popular and serve our public, got a couple things up here. Administrative polling locations, just had our elections, so where do I go to vote? Find it very quickly. Infrastructure and roads, we just talked about some DOT information, so we use a lot of that. Some of our higher usage data that's available online is the imagery that we use, and then the elevation data, so or the LiDAR data. So those are very, very popular. The data that we put out, accuracy is critical, and here's two examples: public safety addresses and emergency services. And so the data that we put out, we talk about authoritative sources, and we talk about accuracy is very important in these particular cases. And here is an example where MACCOM and Wasilla, the dispatch, is using our data to dispatch emergency responders to the correct location and then get them to the hospital as quick as possible when necessary. So accuracy important. The other part of this is we're not just doing this because it's a lot of fun, but the so what factor, well, here we see it. This is usage data over the past year of how many times these data sets have been hit. So we're seeing thousands, tens of thousands of views, and we can start to get an idea of the pattern of when they're being used and how frequent. Our parcel viewer that we discussed a little bit earlier, we also have some information here about how often that gets hit. And we see a spike here this fall, that there's a little bit more usage going on right now. We were discussing what's the reason for that. Well, there might be a couple of reasons for that. One of them is we recently published new aerial imagery, so we're going to get some more usage there because people want to see that new imagery. And the other part of that is getting the word out. So we've got some members of our GIS office that have been out working with emergency services and talking to them about this data and what's important about it, why it's more accurate than using Google Maps. And so just by advertising what we have available, we're driving more usage. Okay. Again, looking at usage, you can see on this slide, maybe you can't read that from where you're sitting, parcel viewer. So again, that's the map, that's the imagery, that's the parcels, that's people's property. So that's the highest hitter there, and then kind of tapers off from there. Again, our feature services, we've been talking about just publishing just raw data and feature services. Highest hitter over here are parcels. Once again, it's the parcels. People are interested in their property. Now, when we look at these numbers, you know that there's a lot of public interaction with our services that are consuming this data. But then that's also the apps that we put out. So some of that is driven internally by the borough, some of it's our apps, and some of that's just other people using it. Okay. And then this is kind of a fun map. This shows where the heaviest usage is coming from. Obviously in Alaska and the US is going to be the heaviest usage of our data, but then we see that there's quite a bit of usage from Canada, Europe, and Asia. Also has quite a bit of people looking at our information. So you might think, Asia, what's going on there? Maybe that's the hackers. back there knows that. But, and some of that is we do have Asian companies wanting to come up and do business in the borough. We recently had some timber sales, and there's other kinds of resource sales. So some of that activity might actually be legitimate. Okay, so then next thing that we're looking at is what are some of the upcoming opportunities to make more data more available to our public. And so one of the things that we're working on is when you want to do business with the borough and you're looking for bids or proposals and you want to come do business with us, we're getting more of that information out more readily and more easily. And so we've got some opportunity to improve the way that we make that data available. And some of the other things that we do, again, with the apps that we make available or the web pages that we make available. Jack put this one together for us. We like to eat our own dog food, as he likes to say. In other words, we're going to use our own data within our own apps to create apps that help our public and put these services out. So again, my property is the biggest usage, job opportunities, press releases, legislation, contract opportunities, and so on. Another opportunity that is coming up is we're working with our public safety to use more of these tools that we have available to us now to build dashboards like this that will give emergency services more timely information about our people who are in the field doing good work. This is not a graph of the borough, it's an example of one of the things we're trying to put together. So a lot of usage. Okay, that's all I have today. Any quick questions here?
I'm wondering, are you guys integrating AutoCAD data at all into some of these other apps, like these design projects you were showing in the past?
And I've got some smart people here to help me, but AutoCAD we use to draw our parcels. Is there any other AutoCAD integration?
At this time, no, but as part of our parcel build process, we, like Eric said, all of our data is drawn in AutoCAD, so we can convert that into GIS. So the parcels, the government lots, some of the text that we use from there is what we use to publish out to like our parcel viewer. But if you're looking for something specific, come ask us.
I was just curious about that.
Any other questions, or otherwise Mike's going to show a little bit about how the community is using some of our data as well.
So, still speaking with data sharing, municipality, in order to make sure our 911 information is current for areas outside of the municipality, we again automate the download of the geodatabase of addresses and streets from the Connecticut Peninsula Borough, and we also consume the streets and addressing services for the Matsu Borough. And we take those, we transform them into a format that's compatible with the 911 system. And then that gets uploaded up into the 911 system. Kind of as a byproduct of that, one of the requirements of our system is that each street actually has to have a unique ID. And occasionally we'll grab some data that has duplicate IDs. And so we've automated an email process where we'll send an email to somebody or someplace at the Matsu Borough that identifies when a duplicate street ID shows up. That's all I have.
Good question, Mike. Yes. So the 911 data, again, that you got from Matsu, so how does that, I guess, what's happening there as far as sometimes you get calls that are Anchorage-based emergency services that go to a call in Matsu and vice versa?
Aaron.
Hello.
It's AFD.
We have we manage dispatching for CDR volunteer and urban volunteer services. So many times the troopers will call and say there's a medical emergency in Hope, for instance, which is outside of our boundary.
but they don't have anyone that can respond, so then we send resources down. Our mapping previously stopped at mile 76, so we had like all of our calls, that's the farthest our map went, so we had a bunch of calls, even though we went and turned them past and whatever, but they would stop there because that was the end of our mapping capabilities we had. But now we're able to more accurately pinpoint where we're responding to a motor vehicle accident or whatever outside of our taxable boundaries and current Anchorage to direct maps. Likewise with the wildfire up north, we sent units out so we're able to track their actual location in the wildfire area, not just Anchorage. They didn't just stop at the Anchorage boundary.
Is there a lot of transformation that happens? Like you talked about the MOA transforms this data. Just real quick, is that a lot of work, a little bit of work?
So the setup was a lot of work. Our 911 system, the data formats, I think are different between the EPD and AFD. But once it's set up, so I'm not sure this was kind of in place before I started at the municipality. It has basically stayed intact. So yeah, there is investment in getting the transformation system in place, but once it's in place, as long as nothing else changes on either end, it's pretty stable.
All right, thanks so much. We got 10 minutes. So thanks for the break.
Good, man.
Snacks up there and coffee and water.
It's actually working reasonably well right now.
Hopefully this will take under 10 minutes.
Just hand that mic. Just remember to hand the mic off. Yeah. And Eric, if I wanted to, you have a model, a railroad guy. He's fantastic. Because he summarized the question, and he did that. If you can do that, that just is so helpful. Well, it helps for everybody here what he has to say. Okay, so I'll pause this. Ooh, we have 4 people watching. Ooh. Ooh.
Wonder who?
I don't know. Well, we'll find out.
Oh, I'll tell you
So how many minutes is this break?
That's about 15.
15 minutes.
Yeah, maybe 10 because we're a little bit behind. No worries. Yeah, we're flexible. If we pass control over to him, he's on. Easiest.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. You come in fine.
Okay, now you hear me now.
I'm not sure that you're in why exactly.
You just have to listen between the
Well,
echoes.
tell you what, if you can hear me and you can help me translate any questions at the end, I think we'll be fine. Or we just won't let anyone else speak. I'm keeping.
All right, Rob, can you hear me on the microphone or no?
I think he's just picking one here.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Silverberg. I'm with Dell Technologies. First of all, thank you guys for allowing us to sponsor this event. So we're very happy to do that. We have our local sales team here in the back, account team, that is looking forward to working with you in all the ways that they do. We do have a very exciting presentation. We have 2 halves. We're going to do first 30 minutes with the CIO for San Jose, California. His name is Rob Lloyd, and he'll be presenting a lot of what San Jose's strategy is around smart city, a bit about their journey, about where they were, where they're headed, and touch a bit on some of their 5G strategy, which is pretty innovative. I'm going to give Rob about 30 minutes or more, and I'm sure you guys will have some questions for him. And after that, I'm going to do a 30-minute or so presentation on our view and strategy around digital and smart cities. And after that, we should have some time for Q&A. So with that, Rob, I'm going to turn it over to you, and ready to go.
Right, sounds good. And let me know if, Rob, you can text me if I am audible at any point. Ironically, it wasn't just about 51 years ago that at Palo Alto Research Center, they did the very first teleconference and markup and presentation live on communication. So now we're pushing it to the edge by doing from San Jose to Alaska. But I think we'll be fine. And so Rob asked me to do something of a homily about our journey with smart cities and specifically the connectivity portion of that portfolio to our friends in Alaska, and I'm really happy to join you. Part of what Rob's heard me say before is this is kind of like preaching to fellow believers. We all have this cause and have this beautiful community that we're responsible for and taking care of. And we're figuring some things out about how these communities are going to transform and be different in the coming decade and 2 decades. There's going to be more urbanization, seems that people are more connected but more fragmented than ever before. So let's go ahead and dive in, but I really am happy to be with you. So first off, just want to make sure that people understand what San Jose is and where we are in the world. San Jose is actually the 10th largest city in the United States. We're the largest city in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we're home to Silicon Valley. But more important is we have almost 1.1 million residents that we take care of and that we're proud to do so to serve. We have one of the most diverse communities in the nation. We have the largest Vietnamese population of any city outside of Vietnam. We speak over 300 languages. Every major language in the world is spoken in San Jose. 41% of our residents are immigrants. 40% of our businesses are immigrant-owned. And one of the most powerful things about that is Silicon Valley has been so successful, so very successful, based on that diversity. But with world-class cities comes some world-class problems and call for world-class solutions. Because we also have a cost of living where our median house costs over $1 million, and that's by no means a mansion. That's 1,500 square feet, built in 1960s. It maybe has a modern kitchen. And maybe you get a one-car garage for that, which puts a lot of stress on families. So while we're extremely well educated, one of the top 5 cities in terms of education, while it's very family friendly, while we have 85,000 businesses here and 130 plus global headquarters, our families actually have a lot of stress, and businesses to survive in that environment is something of a crucible. But when we talk about our city, we also recognize that we're what we call a city from A to Z. We literally help millions of passengers get on and come off every year. And we literally have a red panda that we feed at the zoo every day. And his name is Will Smith. And everything in between. So we have an engineering company, we have a multi-billion-dollar retirement company, we have a finance company, an HR company, a public safety company. Lots of activities. And if you were a business, you probably shut half of them down as not revenue generating. They're public services that we do for the betterment of the community. And that means we have 180 square miles that we support, and there's 1.1 million residents and those 85,000 businesses. But in terms of service touch and the service surface, that looks like a lot of streetlights, it looks like a lot of roads, a lot of calls, a lot of library activity, a lot of community center activity, all to support that environment. But the other truth is that San Jose is one of the leanest big cities in the country, and is actually the leanest big city in the country in terms of per capita resourcing, number of staff, and so forth. We have the fewest number of police officers of any big city. We have the least amount of IT funding of any big city. And you think about Silicon Valley, the assumption is, well, it's going to be so rich. But to give you kind of perspective, we operate that $4.3 billion organization with 7,700 employees on roughly the same IT budget as Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that requires us, because we can't be bigger, to have to be faster or smarter, or some mix thereof. And the city wasn't always that aware of its technology and smart city journey. So back in 2016, Council actually called it, and they said that for the city of San Jose to be the community that it needs to be in the future, we have to stop teaching and treating IT as to be a back office function. And they said we're going to actually have to make it a strategic asset, a strategic resource, because we're going to go from technology supporting functions to technology facilitating functions to technology and data driving functions. And we said there's going to be 5 domains where we're going to focus that effort. One is being a user-friendly city. Another is being very inclusive because of our incredible diversity. Every community has something that's focused on safety. And 2 that are very, not unique, but more representative of San Jose's personality are that we're going to be a sustainable city, and we're the first city in the world, or the country, sorry, to adopt the Paris Accord as a city and actually have an action plan for climate impact to be reduced. And we're going to be a demonstration city, and this is part of being Silicon Valley, is our council actually understands the importance of failure and says, we understand that we have to learn and fail. What we ask is that we fail forward, we fail smart, and we try to keep those failures somewhat small. But it needs to be one of our values because it's going to be in our DNA. And how that translates to residents is, I don't know how many of us who work in government go and get government services and are going, man, that was the best service I ever received, and that was the best experience I've ever received. We all, I think, can confess to a journey that we're going through to go from a customer experience that's often paper-based and frustrating, and going from processes that aren't documented and seem inconsistent, and technologies that seem old or security risks and don't talk well with other systems, and people who are exhausted by that experience, both internally and externally, to an experience where we say we're going to be, in San Jose, as innovative as the community we serve because we're going to make our customer experience easy and responsive and digital and touch them where they are. We're going to automate those processes and design them in ways that are going to be good for our employees, that are going to help us see data and liberate things, and be good as an experience for our residents and our businesses. And that means investment in technologies that help us get there. We often say that once is nothing, and the technology is hard, but the easiest part, and we're going to have to also learn how to hire better, teach teams to change better, and tap this, for the first time, 5 generations are working in the same workplace to build services in a way that are meaningful to all of them. That's multi-channel, and it's also meaning we're going to have to, in our context, because of our leanness, learn how to partner really well with other organizations, like we have with Dell DMC, to make sure we can tap those technologies and that knowledge and that expertise to move that into our service sets. And part of the reason why that's important is most of the data is pointing to a very clear trend. The world is moving to cities and in proximity to cities as well. And if you go at most of the projections from the World Health Organization or Monetary Fund or even the Congressional Budget Office, in America and around the world, 80% of plus of the world's population over the next few decades is going to be living in these urban areas. And they've never been so urban, they've never been so congested, and it creates a different traffic, a different interaction, creates a different use of space. And all that touches every person that we're responsible for making better. But also there's a lot of potential there. And in that, we are going to, as civic technologists and government technologists, have the ability to touch, control, sense, and react at a speed and scale we've never had possible before. And that can be everything from public safety and public health to disaster management, and it's going to even require us to build our cities in different ways. For example, one trend that we see across cities is those great expensive garages we built aren't getting as much usage with Uber and Lyft and ride sharing and millennial generation that actually has a reduction in the number of people proportionally that want their driver's license. The first time in America's history since the invention of driver's license that a generation has had fewer per capita licenses than the predecessor because people are commuting and using their transportation systems in ways they never have before. So we have a lot of this going on, and climate change, whether or not whatever side of the debate you land on, cities, some are sinking, some are flooding, some are hotter than they've ever been. So we have a lot of things that we're going to have to deal with in that. And we're going to have a lot of potential. A way for us to look at it in our IT portfolios, though, is we went from the 90s and 2000s where we had a couple monolithic systems and PCs. Some of us remember when they actually weren't on every desk where everyone had two, to a point where we have hundreds of systems in our environment to thousands. And now we're going to go to hundreds of thousands, if not millions, because of this great curve of IoT. The other thing that attaches to that is the data that's going to come from that. So 2 lessons that we have with the proliferation of technology is that the world is more connected, which means we have more devices. The data we're using is no longer just tabular, it's audio and visual, what's called continuous data, with telemetric data. So you have a linear curve of number of devices going in America from 5 billion to 30 billion over the next roughly next 3 years, last estimate I saw. And the data types are exponentially increasing. This is a portfolio that governments have never had to manage before. And how do you get insights and information out of that? For us, what we say is there's a continuum of value from data and connectivity and why it's so pervasive. But on the data side, for example, is you have access, and you have the ability to analyze, and from that access and analyzation, you get patterns and insights from which you can make decisions and act. And only there have you translated that data into anything of value. But the next phase, where we get to the high maturity, is where then you can predict and automate. And with this kind of scale, the lesson a lot of us are taking from this is we have to be ready for managing this scale through AI, because it's no longer humanly manageable. Even if we have the resources to hire all the people, and the technologists and data people and business people, they wouldn't be able to process this much information intelligently. And so what that's going to turn into is us kind of restructuring our governments even. We have a transportation department, we might have an IT department, an HR department, might have a public works department, but what we've seen in San Jose with all of our recent investments is nothing is just one department anymore. Every solution we've invested in has been a multi-department participation and partnership to make it successful. And where the departments have said, this is mine, they've been the least successful, and some of those projects have just flat out failed. So we have to actually learn and say, what is the next form of our government going to be? Because just like engineering, from structural engineering and civil engineering, you have electrical engineering, it's kind of an engineering question. It's a new form and a multidisciplinary form of engineering. And we're going to have to be able to get good at pulling across and making the service function at center versus the ownership of assets and physical things. And at least in San Jose, and I dare say that this is going to be one of the conversations we're going to have across the country in every city, is one about equity. So when you talk about security, then you start talking about privacy, when you talk about ethics, when you talk about impacts on life, and the fact that in Oakland, for example, 3 blocks can mean 15 years more or less life. It can mean 1,000 days more or less bonus. It can, 3 blocks can mean $1 million plus of lifetime income. And even though we're so connected, we see in our community more divisions than ever, and that heightened tribalism worries us, because how can you make decisions and create an identity as a community if we've fragmented and shattered that community, and that becomes the mode rather than the exception? So for us, one of the things that we're trying to do through all of our smart cities efforts, you'll see, is making sure that the equity lens is incorporated into these investments, that we're making sure we're responsive and connecting our community so that it can talk to itself in constructive ways, and we can, as a community, make decisions about things that are important to us and who Silicon Valley is going to be in the decade ahead. So from there, we also talk about that's all platitudes and aspirational, right? It sounds great, but how are you going to actually do that? And it's very much a conversation of going from the world as it should be, which is often the political conversation, to the world as it is, which is often the government employee conversation, and how do we connect those two and make that journey? For San Jose, we've said that, at least in terms of values, when you go into a transformational effort and blaze new trails, you always need your compass. And for us, the compass is has been and is going to be that we're going to champion our customers, which are residents and businesses and employees. We're going to get to a place where we can run through data. And that's actually a very hard journey to kind of entertain, because even though we're good about processing some descriptive information, making data intrinsic and making bigger decisions and running through deep analytical models is not easy. If you throw information out into Google, Excel, or Power BI, data scientists, you do not make them. But you can make it also, and we've seen examples where you could potentially make $1 billion wrong decision if you're misinterpreting transportation or utility information. So that skill and that culture has to be built. And the last one is something that governments, I think, know inherently, but have to be more explicit about, is we are going to iterate to improve. And bureaucracies are really good about resisting that improvement, that change. But they can also build that in a way that culturally and in terms of how we do our projects, that we can build that in. Excuse me. Another thing I'll say is we also all, I think everyone in this room, gets the mass crush of people, everyone wants everything. And kind of a conversation we had to have in our community is, so not everything can be done. How are we going to take these 400 ideas and requests that we have and turn it into a coherent portfolio of activity where we're going to be focusing on the right things at the right times, produce the right results. And so this is our Venn diagram. And so we said if we're going to do something as a government, it has to be important and cause a lot of people pain, that we're saying that's the focus area. So one of these 400 opportunities, this one's creating enough pain where it's going to escalate. We're also going to say it's something that we should be doing as a city. For example, there's some things we do around housing and homelessness, but we also have to confess that some of those things are not for our city to do. They're handled by other groups, and we're going to have to learn how to partner with those groups to help them answer the question. But if you can't do everything, you're going to say what's core to what we should and can do. And then the last thing we say is now let's apply the lens of the technology and process improvement. Is this something we can actually achieve? I'll give you an example. Is for us, I'll give you an easy one, fireworks. Because of our culture diversity, fireworks and Chinese New Year, Vietnamese New Year, and others, the fireworks culture is really there. People love their fireworks, and they love setting them off. And if you're at City Hall on July 4th, it looks like a sea of fireworks all around, and it's kind of a cool impact. But those cause fires and cause injuries to people, and it's actually against the law in San Jose to do those. But the thing that we said is we can't apply technology to a process that we're not willing to fix. So we're saying don't do it, but we're not willing to enforce it. We're not really that serious about it. So we're not going to, one of the requests was to apply hundreds of thousands of dollars for a reporting solution and an enforcement solution that they weren't going to act on. And there's lots of other examples like that. But when you start using this kind of a lens, what we see is you have a rating scale where you're saying we're going to say what's easy and what's going to take a lot of time, what works with not a lot of effort. What's the risk of it? And then we're going to say how core it is, and that's the darker color, and you're going to say how big the impact, so you'll see it grow or shrink, and changing colors based on what that composite of those four metrics is. And you see this is hundreds of what we call opportunities, and it's actually hiding some because they're layering on top of each other. But we said if we can't do everything and we use that lens, we can now agree with our council and our community in the budget sessions that we have, the community-based budgeting, and our city manager's office, that we're going to focus on these things. And so there's 21 projects that we said we're going to be the most impactful to the community. And so that looks like in practice, as we talk about those initiatives, there's really three venues that we're going to manage those priorities through. One is the IT strategic plan, where we say that these are core, foundational, we have to execute and sustain. There's a Smart Cities roadmap where we say these are the most transformative efforts that we're going to do that's really going to require multi-department activity, to require us to get through a lot of tension, some of it healthy, some of it less healthy. And we're also going to call out the small wonders that we're going to do, where these are projects that are going to have a high fail rate, but they're small, and it's going to be important for us to do those because we're going to get smart through those. So we can make better decisions in the strategic plans for IT and the transformative efforts that we make. And so we keep a balance between those. And in terms of the strategic plan, I'm going to give you kind of a quick step through of what those look like and how to report on them. So we have a Smart Cities Committee. We said we're going to structurally incorporate technology and innovation into your organization. It can't just be that you hire a CIO to lead that effort and everything rides on them. What I've told the city during my recruitment is the CIO is going to be indispensable but insufficient. to Dr. Goldsmith's line, that we're going to have to actually structurally build this into the organization. That means the mayor needs a technology advisor who's going to work with them in council about the partnerships and the politics of technology. We're going to have someone right next to the city manager or chief administrative officer, and the state would be next to the governor, who says in the resource decisions and budget decisions, and to break ties and break silos, they have to sit at that high level. You're also going to have a CIO who's going to execute and sustain those things, and these maps are going to show you maps to that kind of ability. So on the smart cities efforts, you can see all the big lists that we have around the city. And these are the transformative efforts where we are investing time and effort and money in to make ourselves a different government. And these are the small wonders where we say, we have some learning to do in these areas because we're going to have to be able to make some big decisions down the road. And then we also have the IT strategic plan, and when we started this plan, we went in 3-year plan sprints. All these things are over on the left, all these new things didn't exist, but over the course of 3 years, this is what we've done. We've replaced our HR system, our payroll system, our talent management system, our budgeting system, our utility billing system, our treasury management system, our revenue system, our workers' comp system, and all these things, put in a new CRM, work with Dell on some innovative architecture work. All these things are lining up toward a concerted and purposeful map of where we want to end up. And in that, not sure if you caught it, but there's a lot around data and connectivity. And it is a more mobile and more connected world that we're building for. And these are the artifacts that we see related to that. So you see us being able to do smart in the field with vehicles. You see us trying to do the inclusion efforts and the economic development efforts. And part of the realization we had when we came up with our digital inclusion and broadband strategy is we thought we were pretty awesome in terms of connectivity, and we were wrong. So when we actually looked at our assessments, we said we're in the bottom quartile of all big cities in the country. We're in the bottom quartile of cities in the world. And how is that possible when we have so much technology and so many rich companies in the area? And to put another spin on it, we said, let's look at it at the individual level. We have 1.1 million people almost, and we see almost 100,000 people who lack consistent high-speed connectivity. And that in turn affects how they get educated, how they apply for jobs, and how they connect with their support community. And so this, in other words, is not okay. And we said there's a problem to be solved there. And at the same time, we saw an emerging landscape for how data and connectivity were going to have to be emergent for us to connect all things, manage all things in a safe and secure way, but to provide better services with fewer people through that intelligence. And we also had the reality that our vertical services were going to be more valuable than we ever had realized. So it's kind of ironic that smart cities are going to be built largely on dumb holes. But the streetlights and with the smart cells and other sensors, the two things I'll tell you is we have to be ready for it, but it's so immature that you can't make any big bets yet. I think this was our assessment at the time. Is we're going to have to make a lot of small bets and learn and be ready to make those large investments when the industry can be ready for it. And so when you talk about strategy, you say, all right, what are the approaches that the city can take to solve this problem? One is that you do a full build-out where the government owns it. Chattanooga did that to great success. San Francisco tried and had to call it fail. You have other folks where you say, I'm not doing anything. The private sector will have to figure that out on its own. And we have to find a hybrid model in the middle where we can influence, but not necessarily have to own. And part of that is because we are such a lean city. And part of it is because we actually have the ability to do a few things that maybe other communities don't. So we said if we're going to be clear about it, and we know about the economic development purpose, the inclusion purpose, and kind of the management of city operations purpose, this is going to be the right model for us. And part of it is also because private sector can act very quickly. If we're partnered and we have the right values focused on, we can get to a great build-out and be prepared for 5G and small cells and IoT better together than we can apart. And so we have some things of value where we can move faster through the leasing and the permitting process. Private sector wants to do things quickly and efficiently with lower cost and high revenue. So what we did is we came up with a value trade that's actually in the FCC was called the model for the nation. And unfortunately, the carrier, AT&T, Verizon Mobility, said, yeah, but you're San Jose, no one else is getting that deal. And those small cell agreements steered basically $500 million of infrastructure investment in San Jose, created the largest inclusion fund in the nation, sorry, not in the world, but at least in the nation, where we're going to take $24 to $30 million and be able to invest it in the parts of the community that are normally neglected. We also have access to their full smart cities portfolio for that period, so we can create some of the coolest solutions you've ever seen. And 5G and small cells will be here faster and in a higher number than pretty much anywhere else. So we can really create these great agreements if we know how to partner effectively. But to say on the portfolio level, to be very clear, all of us are going to be steering this portfolio to some degree in that connectivity and data is going to have three main purposes. One is an inclusion lens, and that's the equity piece. One is the economic development, how it supports our economy and employers and activities. And then the other one, and that includes special events, by the way, like if you host an NFL game or a hockey channel. And then also the city services is you're going to need this network to deliver services in the most efficient and optimal way that we haven't been able to in the past. And so the broadband agreements sum out to this. And those agreements were signed in June 2018. We're going to have to go from being able to do 40 macro cells a year to 4,100 small cells in 2 years. That's going to connect with 1,000 miles of fiber that for the most part is already built out. And we're going to not have a single dollar impact to the city's general fund where we had to make those investments to make that happen. So good for us, good for the community, good for our businesses, and good for our partners. And that $24 million of the inclusion fund, that's through a partnership with a state agency where we are making those grants to the community and nonprofits to make sure that we can connect folks. And one version of that, or maybe not one version, but how that portfolio looks in action in another way is we have a multi-million-dollar global demonstration with Facebook on the Teragraph backhaul. So this is how do you build out a hyper-fast network without having to lay fake fiber everywhere. And this is the overlay of San Jose's downtown. So for San Jose, we have a Wi-Fi network that connects our airport, our convention center, and our downtown, where you can come into the city, connect to one Wi-Fi network, and have minimum 5 megabit per second speed for free throughout that experience. And Facebook has made some major investments to prove that technology and shows us as their global partner. We also have Wickley Fast Wi-Fi, which is the latency network where downtown we want to activate it better and be able to support special events like Christmas in the Park, the NFL games, the NHL championship, those kinds of things. We also then have a partnership with school districts to extend that. So we have some areas in San Jose where the schools have over 80% free and reduced lunch. So these are people who can't even afford food. And we start getting some really bad stories that they were in the parking lot of 7-Eleven, of stores, of restaurants, trying to connect to their Wi-Fi so they could do homework and apply for jobs. And the school district and the city said, how about we partner to try to extend Wickley Fast Wi-Fi and that Teragraph network. We'll pay for the construction if you pay for the operations and maintenance. And of that 100,000 people, these legs of access east side, the first one of them when we activated, we connected 6,000 households that previously did not have broadband access to the modern world. So once we get the other two, and we get all three, that's actually going to be about 15,000 to 20,000 households, about 40,000 people potentially, where we close that 100,000 person gap. And then also our libraries really are community centers and resource centers for the community, and they are important parts of how we're going to make sure that everyone in the community can connect and be a part of the modern San Jose that we envision. So let me speak through just a couple more. This is the actual piece that I forgot to click my clicker. But this is where IT also sees the portfolio, is that we have two 20 gig lines. We support the city uses, our partnerships, we activate the school partnerships, we have the airport, public safety, the transportation network, conventions. And so this is where we're managing that environment. And we know that we're not going to be able to keep this up without more partnership because the carrying cost is going to start getting really high to have that kind of a network. Anchorage gave us a pro bono project where they looked at all of our assets and the value of those local assets. And what we're going to try to do next is create this partnership, or a main partnership, if not a multi-partnership, to say we can use value exchange in terms of advertising and access to vertical infrastructure. If you help us continue our quest to be more inclusive with that access, to support city functions, and to support those economic development needs. But I also want to be clear that we have a lot of problems still to solve. And one is the IoT architecture, and this is one where I think all of us are going to have to learn, but also be advocates, so that this model gets manageable. And it's very complicated, very diverse, in the sense there's lots of potential technologies, and we need clarity before we can say that platforms are going to be good investments. Otherwise, you might be buying one of everything. Another piece of this is the transition from thinking of this as a security issue to a privacy and ethical use question too. And for us, we've invited a lot of nonprofits and institutional learning and companies to help us figure out how do you build a city that has that level of pervasiveness and sensing technology without crossing the line and putting our residents at risk or sacrificing the trust relationship we have with them. So you can see how we work with the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the ACLU, the Marcola Center, Intel and Cisco have privacy centers and of excellence there. And for Standard Day, part of what we did is we recently approved our privacy principles. We said as we do all of our work, not just smart cities, but all technology, we're actually going to do a privacy and ethical use filter on all of those decisions to make sure that we don't step in a direction that we can't walk back from. And we don't want to ever sacrifice that trust relationship and cause harm. And so you'll see that in our football analytics and how we approach that. You'll see it how we do the illegal dumping and trash pickup, how we're doing shot spotter and sensing in high crime areas. And even data monetization, we had a $1 million offer there we stepped away from as a partnership just because we said we're not satisfied we answered the privacy and ethical use question effectively enough. And so let me pause there, or stop there, because I've talked for a while now, and see if anyone has any questions or if I can fill in any of the edges for folks.
So Rob, can you hear me on the microphone here or no?
I can, you're a bit echoey.
Okay, I'll try to walk away from where it's echoing. I'm sure there's tons of questions in the room. We don't have time for a ton. Maybe 2 or 3 if anyone has any specific questions for Rob. You covered everything right now. I think the vision that you shared was pretty impressive, and I think the group here in the room was definitely leaning forward in their seats listening to everything you had to say. So thank you very much. One last call for questions.
I was just going to ask what some of the partnerships around the homelessness efforts were.
Okay. The question, Rob, is are there any specific partnerships you put together around the homeless issue?
Yeah, so homelessness and housing in San Jose and the Bay Area are linked, and there's a lot of partnerships around that. And the conversations tend to go in one of maybe 4 ways. One is we have a homeless population that people are complaining about because they're on the streets, kind of a nuisance homelessness, is what some people would call it. We actually have folks that are called bridge housing situations where they aren't typical homeless people, they don't want to be homeless, but because of some kind of financial or health event, they end up on the street, and the data is very clear on that, is if you don't help them within 4 weeks, they could become long-term homeless. Because once you get into that rut, it's hard to get out of. Another scenario that we're dealing with, and we have partnerships for, and I'll kind of recount the partnerships later, is around the affordable housing for your average working adult and working family. When houses cost $1.1 million on average, and a nice house that you actually want to live in might cost $1.4, $1.6 million. it gets really hard for people, especially in the service economy, who aren't making the great tech job dollars, like our Silverberg. It's a struggle, and we have to look for those scenarios where we can do programs to help them out. And then the upper end, some of the corporate discussion is they're actually telling the community we're having to leave the Bay Area, not because of the opportunity, not because of the support. We've got everything we want here, but our employees are telling us they can't survive here. So the opportunities have now been outstripped by the cost of living. And there's some crazy things that are happening around that. And we've got, I think, a total of 2.5, if not $3.5 billion that Cisco, Facebook, and Google have committed to this housing problem in the Bay Area. But that only is going to go so far because there's a supply and demand question is people also don't want to keep building up and taking up all the natural land. And so it's one of the things where it's so popular, demand so high, supply so low. Do you crack and break that supply question and then just build everything everywhere and it kind of becomes like a dystopian megalopolis? Or are there other questions like can we go from transit? I'll tell you the partnerships we have with a lot of nonprofit ones, like Destination Home, TAF. You have a lot with the corporate entities, we have with the counties, and with the transit agencies to make sure that, and we don't have a great transit system in the Bay Area. I know other people might argue with me on that one, but if people are still in their cars and we have hyper commuters who commute up to 2 hours each way every day, then you know transit and where housing is not where the jobs are. And so I don't have an answer for you, but there's a lot of people working on this, trying to figure it out because it impacts people so intrinsically in their lives.
So now you know if you ask Rob a question, you get a long answer. With that, I'll say, is there one more question in the room before we move on? All right. So thank you, Rob. I think that was an amazing overview. I know that the team in the room is very appreciative, so thank you very, very much. I'm very happy that Dell has a partnership with the city, and we support the city in their mission. And with that, Rob, if you'd like to stay on, you're welcome to and hear my pitch for the 34th time. Or you can drop it if you'd like, either way. So you're already gone. Got it. Okay, cool. So with that, I don't know if he's on or not. He might be on mute. But I will say the partnership we've had with the city has been very good. It's been very strategic, talking about problems, how we solve problems. I'm a member of their Smart City Advisory Board, so I get to meet with the city leadership once a quarter. They put out various technology challenges they have to the team in the room, and I'm sitting next to folks from Google and Cisco and others, and we all talk about, how we might solve problems with technology. So it is a great partnership, and we look forward to continuing. So with that, I'm going to take the next 30 minutes to talk a bit about vision and strategy in smart cities. We call it digital communities. I notice you guys call this forum the Smarter Communities Forum. So don't like the term smart cities, overused, sort of a marketing term. Digital communities because it is about digital transformation, in our view, how technology can solve real problems for communities. And communities because it's not just cities, it's counties, it's state agencies, it's universities, so it's more ubiquitous in terms of how technology can help. So we're going to advance. Is this advancer working or not? It's just a big button.
That's someone else's.
Is it going to do anything?
Yes, it should.
Okay.
It's still plugged
in. Well, let's see if I can walk over here and do it from here.
It was working.
Oh, well, see if I get the right one. All right, so trying to advance again.
It's not going to work. I can advance it for you.
Okay, I'll just say next. I'm ready. So, overcome technology challenges. That's what we do every day, right? So, a little bit about Dell that you may not know is we're not just laptops and servers. We have a broad portfolio. As we get to the next slide, I will let you know what that is.
I think that's our problem. There we go.
So you think it's going to work now?
No, keep going.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. So as I go and meet with our customers, and thank you all for being customers of ours. We appreciate that very much. They don't know as much about Dell as we do, of course. They see Dell as laptops and servers, but it's a much broader portfolio. For example, we own VMware. Many people didn't know that. We own companies like Boomi, RSA, SecureWorks, Pivotal, VirtuStream. So the portfolio that we bring is not just the hardware infrastructure, but a lot of software and a lot of strategic software that we can use to solve real problems. Next. Okay, so a lot of what I get to do is visionary. Where are we today? Where are we headed? How do we get there? And what technologies within our broad portfolio can we apply to solve real problems? Next. So some of the things we're trying to align behind is the challenges that we see. Now it's working, it's awesome. So really, as a resident, as you live here, what do you expect from your city government, your county government, state government? You want an environment that operates efficiently, where you feel at home. Public safety is very, very important. Affordable housing, definitely important in San Jose. Maybe not so here, because it's pretty affordable, I believe, although I guess as the property prices are starting to increase. Serve the right services for your needs, quality education, and engaging and connected. So these are sort of the perspectives of the people living in the community. How can we support those with technology? And then the other side of the equation is, as a city leader, how do you leverage technology to get you to the next level? So new regulations and certain economic conditions, citizens' expectations, trust in public services needs to be stronger, budgets are challenging. All these things, obviously, if you're in city IT, you understand these very well. One of the areas that we believe that cities have a real opportunity, and not an expensive opportunity, but actually an opportunity to leverage data. We've heard about it from some of the other presenters today. But really the question is, my city generates a lot of valuable data. How can I leverage it to create value for the city and its citizens? So having a data-driven strategy, we believe, is very, very important. I noticed from the earlier presenters, they were talking about data platforms, data on the mapping tools like Esri, and really the focus on what you can do with data. Other challenges that you're probably facing, aging infrastructure, probably not as bad as here as it is in places like Boston and New York. Limited public budgets, unprecedented urbanization. Again, not hitting you guys as much as some other places yet, but probably growing. Is Anchorage growing double digits year over year? Not yet. It will be. So some areas are growing faster than others. Okay. Environmental sustainability is definitely a key factor for many cities as well. So really, how can technology help with these major initiatives? And I will say that the smart city market, when I first started working in about 4 years ago, was more about experimentation with technology. What's the latest shiny object? What's the latest sensor? What's the latest device that we can deploy and test? And now it's become much more focused on outcomes. What can we actually deliver with technology? So these are just a few examples. City of Bellevue with adaptive traffic signals, Safe Drivers 9 million. 8 Spanish cities reduced their electricity consumption by 64%. This is one I found very interesting. I actually got to chat with the team that did this. New York City used predictive analytics to increase building inspector efficiency from 13% to 70%. This was looking for buildings that were fire hazards. So people that were living in the buildings that were potentially at risk of fire hazard. Chicago's array of things we've heard a bit about, citywide sensor network and automating waste management. So as we start looking at what we're trying to achieve, it's more outcomes oriented and less about technology for technology's sake. 4 main pillars of our strategy. We're hoping to help cities get to greater efficiency, optimized use of resources, greater public safety, enriching, which is that engagement between the city or county and its population, and then for all. We heard a lot about digital inclusion and reaching out to some areas of the community that were underserved. That's a very main part of our strategy as well. If you look at what some of the largest cities are doing, I know you guys are not that, but I'll talk about what some smaller, medium-sized cities are doing as well. We do a lot of work in New York City. It's like an entire country out there just in the city. But what they did is they started looking at what they were going to do that was going to be innovative in New York. And they do have some vast resources and vast budgets, so they can pretty much do and focus on what they want to focus on. But their last CIO talked a bit about data and what they should be doing better with data. They will empower agencies to better share data and connect gaps internally and across government. I heard data sharing come up a few times in the other presenters, and I do think it's great. Establishing the first ever citywide data platform, enabling agencies to seamlessly ingest, store, analyze, share, and act on their data. And then establish the first ever citywide integration platform, enabling agencies to automate workflows both within and across agency clusters. So if you had to say, where is Dell focused in this space, one of the areas is this exact use case. So if you're looking for someone who can help you with connecting data, aggregating data, and having a data architecture that supports these sorts of things, this is a major focus for us. So how do you get there? Realizing the vision. This is a project we did, oddly enough, with the city of San Jose, and Rob, if you're still on, you can chime in. We did something called the Open Data Community Architecture, which was primarily a data integration, data aggregation, and data sharing platform. We leveraged a concept called data lake, and you may not have heard the term data lake, you probably have if you're within IT. Essentially, a data lake is leveraging a Hadoop platform. What a Hadoop platform can do is it can handle big data, structured data, unstructured data, and if you ingest the data into this platform, it becomes instantly analytics ready. So if you started to look at how do we make better use of our data, how do we make it analytics ready, one strategy is around ingesting it into an analytics environment, almost an analytics factory, if you will. So we looked at 4.5 million police incidents, 2 million traffic incidents, all the data sets from the open data portal. We learned a few things. It was a collaborative project. We worked together with their chief data officer, and we found that they didn't have data scientists. And they couldn't do some of the cool advanced AI that they wanted to do, but what they could do is start to create data stories. So they leveraged Microsoft Power BI, which I'm sure many of you have, a product called Tableau, which is a little bit higher end in my view, can do some more advanced things with telling data stories. And interestingly enough, we started to look at trend analysis. We started to look at what intersections in the city were the most problematic for incidents and accidents. And we also were able to slice and dice the data based on time of day, day of week, or type of incident. So we found that certain intersections were problematic for vehicle to vehicle, and others were very problematic for vehicle to bicycle, vehicle to pedestrian, and most recently, vehicle to scooter. You guys have scooters proliferating here, but it's becoming a growing issue for many cities. How do we deal with the scooters? Not just because they get hit by cars, but they actually ride on the sidewalks and they run over old ladies walking their dog, and that creates whole new challenges. But a lot of that you can start looking at the data and what it's telling you, and then try to be more efficient in terms of how you respond. This project is actually set to restart. We're actually working on a statement of work with the city right now to do more work around this and continue this effort with them. Another solution that I want to highlight for you guys is something we worked on recently with the city of Las Vegas. It is live in Las Vegas now. We did a pilot project toward the end of last year, and it's been live all through this year. As we're getting to the end of this year, I realize it's been almost a year. Essentially, it was around edge analytics for public safety and other use cases. So crowd counting and sound detection, wrong vehicle movement, persons of interest, vehicles of interest, vehicle count for traffic congestion and patterns. Essentially, what we wanted to do is put the eyes and the ears of the city out in these remote locations, whether it's an area of Las Vegas called the Fremont Street Experience. I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but it's pretty cool. It's got zip lines and vans and all kinds of cool stuff. It's a lot less expensive than the way over on the Strip. But the idea was, what can we do with edge intelligence? And a lot of our focus in our IoT team is on that concept of edge intelligence. Can we use edge analytics to identify incidents as they're occurring, whether that be screams, glass breaking, shots fired, crowd movement, crowd anomalies, things like that that can be detected at the edge, and then only the alerts sent back to the dashboard. So the city now can potentially decide what type of incidents they want to look for and have the system then monitor through, again, audio and video analytics and alert them to various incidents. So the goals were, an easy to use dashboard, identifying incidents, alerting, and then playing that video or audio clip of the incident as it occurs. So 32 cameras, 25 license plate recognition, 7 crowd counting cameras, 5 gunshot analytics, 5 glass breaking audio analytics. So these are the kind of sensors we deploy. and we generated some very interesting results. I do have to say this was a partnership between Dell Technologies and NTT Group. NTT did all the systems integration work and putting it all together. We provided a lot of the component technologies that went into it.
Yeah, I can zoom in. I can do something.
So this is what it looks like. When an incident is detected, in this case it's a wrong-way vehicle, an alert is launched, and then the video clip of that incident is then provided to the city. So this is a one-way street. That car was detected as a wrong-way vehicle. It almost hits the pedestrian over there, which luckily it doesn't, and then here's this other car zooming through. So the city knew they had problems with this intersection. They had a few accidents, they've had a number of incidents, they didn't know how bad the problem was. So as they put this system out there and they started counting the number of wrong-way vehicles, they thought it was 2 or 3 a day. It was more like 10 to 15 a day. So it was a very big surprise to the city that they had this many incidents. So of course they then start making changes to the city. Better signage, better, whatever it is. I would say signage is what they tried first. Interestingly enough, once they put the new signage out, it went from 10 to 15 incidents a day down to 8 to 10 a day. So clearly it wasn't enough. So they had the measurements, they had the metrics to go back to city council and say, you know, you gave us this money, we put some signs up, we need more. We need some more to prevent this sort of situation from reoccurring. And it's those metrics and those data points that they didn't have before. The other thing that they can do is vehicle recognition, count, classify, and monitor. You can start using that AI for predictive models. And interestingly enough, they're starting to look at this from economic development viewpoint. So in counting vehicles and counting crowds, we can start looking at, is there a place in the city that has a high population between 7 and 10 in the morning? Maybe we could use that data to get a coffee house in that location. And of course, I presented this in Seattle, and well, we have a coffee house on every corner, so it doesn't matter. But that's the idea. And then if we can identify that there's a large amount of young people congregating in a certain part of the city in the mid-afternoon, maybe that's a good place for a Jamba Juice or for an ice cream parlor. So that data then can be leveraged for economic development use cases. Oddly enough, the city came up with that, and they proposed it back to us in terms of the type of data they were looking for and the economic development use cases they had for it. So here's another example of a vehicle identification. This is a license plate reader, but it doesn't just do license plate, it also does year, make, and model. So red Mitsubishi Outlander. So in the case of an Amber Alert or something like that, where we know the vehicle type, we don't necessarily know the license plate, we can actually try to grab all the red SUVs in the city and at least alert us to where those might be. But it actually works very, very well. So crowd counting was another thing the city was interested in. Detected crowd that exceeds expected thresholds. Try to say that 5 times fast. Dispatch is notified, predictive models forecast potential crowds. And again, this information is useful for planning and economic development. And this is an example of crowd counting in the Fremont Street experience. It has a capacity, it has a current level, it has an estimated crowd, and it's telling us how many people are there. And for a city like Las Vegas that thrives on tourism and on generating more and more people out in this certain area, and I will say that the city is also trying to attract people away from the Strip, which is not part of the city, to downtown. We're starting to leverage some of these metrics. The metrics that are interesting is if we have a really good band one night, we get more people there. So we can actually measure that. If we have a poor band that doesn't draw many people to the area, we can measure that as well. So now we can start understanding whether the band that we're bringing in on Saturday night is the right one, or maybe they should be moved to Tuesday night. So another thing about predictive models is once your system starts to learn what the crowd count should be, you can start to detect anomalies to that and alert you to those anomalies. So this is both the red, or the actual values, these are the number of people on certain days and times, and then the blue is the predictive model based on the system learning over time. Everyone usually points out and says, well, what happened here? Well, the camera had to be taken down for maintenance or whatever it was, but we still had a predictive model of how many people should be there based on past historical trends. The other thing that's cool about this is if we have an anomaly, like let's say a park, and usually on a Tuesday afternoon a park has 5 to 10 people in it, suddenly we have 300 people in the park on a Tuesday afternoon. That's an anomaly. And we wouldn't have known about it, except the system is identifying those anomalies and alerting the city back to saying, we have a situation here that's unusual. We should take a look at it, figure out what it is. Is it a gang activity? Is it a party that's unsanctioned? Is it an unpermitted event? All these things are now detectable. So here's the metrics. This was during the first 3 months of usage, 4 million traffic counts, over 1 million unique license plate. Crowd counts came later, so there's only 500,000 of that. And here's the key piece. Although we had 65 terabytes of video and audio recorded, we didn't store it. We didn't even keep it. All we kept was the data. And the data that was generated was only 2.64 gig of data. So think about 65 terabytes down to 2.64 gig of actionable data. So that's the sort of intelligence and data gathering that you can use. And this is a great example of what edge IoT, edge intelligence, smart city technology can do. Okay, how are we doing on time? We're good? All right, cool. So what we're seeing is a trend toward where we were in the past, which is silos all around the city. Many cities are very, very siloed. You have your water systems, your transit systems, your waste systems, your firefighting, your police. Police are always going to be separate. You won't share with anybody. We all know that. But if we start to create an environment where we can start connecting data between these silos, data connections, data integration, data analytics, and data aggregation of data words, essentially change the way a city operates. And I heard about this in terms of data sharing initiatives that you guys have in various cities in the room. And it's not just internal, but it's internal and external, the ability to start sharing these data sets, which of course can start transforming the way the city operates. So through the more intelligent use of data, through becoming more data driven, you can turn from garbage to smart garbage, or water to smart water, or social services to smart social services, because you're starting to leverage that data, use that data, use it to improve efficiencies. So we agree with a lot of the folks that were up there earlier talking about platforms. And the reason that platforms are valuable is because they're reusable. Instead of doing a system for smart parking and a separate system for smart waste management, you can start leveraging the same technology stack over and over. Then you can benefit from, again, reuse of that same technology stack. In our vision, we talk about the core infrastructure, which is a modern data center approach, leveraging VMware or other, I would say, private cloud model, depending on how you move. It gives you that flexibility. Another thing we preach, and everyone agrees, is you need to think about cybersecurity day one. Governments, as you know, are under attack every day, and they're getting better and better. So having that cybersecurity as part of your core infrastructure strategy is very, very important. Then, as you start looking at edge intelligence, you start moving these sensors out to the edge, as we did with Las Vegas, you have a number of technologies that need to exist. It's easy to deploy 2 or 3 cameras, but what if you're doing 500? What if you're doing cameras on 69,000 streetlights in San Jose? It's a whole different scale, it's a whole different problem, where you need some of these management tools to manage, I would say, IoT at scale. Next slide, this is sort of the project we worked on with San Jose. It was around the data platform, leveraging a data lake architecture, both for real-time data, big data, structured data, unstructured data, a repository pretty much that can handle any data that the city was anticipating. One of the use cases they talked with us about was the smart streetlight deployment. Each smart streetlight was going to produce 1.6 gig of data per day in one setting, and even more in other settings. So 1.6 gig of data times 69,000 streetlights. That's a data problem that most cities are not well equipped to handle. And we actually tried testing it out using this big data platform as to whether we could actually ingest and analyze data at that scale. Lastly, you need the application platform. In the case of the work we did with San Jose, it was Tableau and Microsoft Power BI. But those predictive models that I showed you with Las Vegas, a lot of that is around these data modeling tools and AI tools as well. So these are sort of the 4 platforms that are part of our strategy. A lot of this work was done with Las Vegas. A lot of this work was done with San Jose. But if you're looking for a place to start, it's really focused on having that right data center architecture that you can then layer these things on top of. Lastly, is just sort of some high-level concepts. Digital is transforming these things. This is an example from the connected trash bin. You may have heard of a company called Big Belly, which is deployed in a lot of different cities around the states. You have a trash can, you gets connected to the network, then becomes a smart trash bin, and you end up with a smart waste management system. I don't know if the city of Anchorage has started looking into this, but it can be just trash bins around the city, or it can actually be dumpsters, where the city has to empty the dumpster certain times, and can do it only when it's full instead of on a regular routine. Taking that concept a little further, as you start to look at strategy, you have your asset, maybe it's a fleet vehicle within the city, becomes a smart asset, a smart connected asset, a connected system, and then you get to this concept of system of systems. When you think about system of systems, it's that data integration, and it's that intelligence that you're able to generate across the different silos of the system, or the city, sorry. Lastly, we view the problem as broader than sort of where we were. Where we were was data center. Everything would come back to the data center, but we're seeing more things push towards edge intelligence, more things push closer to the field. I know that this area is widely rural and you can't monitor as much as you might like. So by putting some of that technology out in the field, you can gain that edge intelligence. We then see a growth within what we call cloud computing or distributed computing, where we're moving more of the compute resources closer to where the sensors exist. So instead of trying to stream all that video and audio data back to the data center, we're operating intelligence on it out at the edge. And lastly, you've got your core data center, but almost every customer we're talking to is thinking about multi-cloud, hybrid cloud. What workloads should I run on-prem? What workloads should be in AWS or Azure? And a lot of our strategy is helping them to move workloads seamlessly between on-prem and cloud-based models. Because cloud is not cheaper for all workloads, it's cheaper for some. But if you start looking at high transaction volume, high data volume workloads, they're more expensive typically in the cloud. So the ability to easily move a workload from your data center to a cloud provider, over to another cloud provider, and then maybe back to your data center is some of the focus area that we can help you with as well. So it's sort of a multi-cloud, hybrid cloud portability strategy. Okay, wrapping up here. You guys probably have different challenges than New York and San Jose, but you do have challenges here, and things that technology can help you with. So different starting points, different outcomes, different priorities. So find a way to solve a specific problem. It could be in any of these different areas. If you look at environment and utility, economic growth, citizen engagement, mobility, public safety, digital government, all these areas of, I would say, smart city technology exist and should be into a sort of cohesive smart city strategy. You saw the strategy that was talked about by Rob Lloyd, where they prioritized certain things in terms of whether it was core to the city's business, biggest impact to the community. And I would recommend that as you start to look at some of these areas, what's the most important for your community? How can you start driving technology to improve? So another thing I'll say is that we're past the stage of technology for technology's sake. We're now looking at technology to solve real problems. So whether that problem is a lot of moose, running through downtown, could be a problem here, I don't know. How do you solve that with technology? Maybe you can't solve that one, but maybe you can. So looking for immediate benefits and then a foundation for future projects. I will say that a platform approach is important, but you have to deliver individual projects. So if you look at San Jose, they have their projects, they have their strategy, whether that be around transportation or water or education or economic development. One of these problems you can solve. I think the key is not to look at it as a silo, but as a strategic approach to repeating the same architectures over and over. So with that would be a wrap for me. Hopefully found this informative, and once again, thank you guys for being customers of ours. We look forward to supporting you in your journey. Thank you.
So we got some time, questions?
Sorry, no questions. All right, Q&A, let's do it.
You mentioned, big cities, and you said that you would give us some examples closer to our scale.
Sure.
So you had Anchorage, 300,000, you go bigger, the Valley, 100,000. So what are some things that we can afford, and how do you communicate the ROI back to your system?
Great questions. Things you can afford easily, whether it's the smallest city or the largest city, is around becoming more data-driven, doing more with the data that you have. So if you have data in silos all over the organization, which typically is the case, can you unlock that with simple tools? I would say Microsoft Power BI, Tableau, data analytics, and starting to develop a data-driven culture is at a very low cost and can be very high value. So if you start looking at the data that you have and generating what I call data stories out of it to see trends that are on the increase, on the decrease, these are things that can be done at a very low cost. In terms of IoT Edge, I have a great story on that one, so thank you for asking, because I forgot about it earlier. A lot with the city of Golden, Colorado. You guys have probably heard of Golden, Colorado. That's where Coors is made. So it's a small town. They don't have a big IT staff. They don't have a big budget. And they have a river that runs right through the center of town, and it runs into the Coors Brewery. And during the summer, on hot days, they actually have a lot of people that raft down the river. They've had a number of incidents on the river for injuries, people that are too drunk, people that fall off the raft. If there's a high number of people there, they feel like they should have some police presence at the city, at the river. So what they did is they mounted 2 intelligent cameras to monitor the river. Very simple IoT use case. They wanted to count the number of people on the river, so they started generating that data. And they also wanted to see if the cameras could start to identify incidents and alert them to incidents, similar to what we did in Las Vegas. So the cost for this project was the cost of two cameras, some analytics software, and a server. Something that even the tiny town of Golden, Colorado could afford, and they started generating this data that we'd never had before. They can now tell you that on July 10th, there were 60 people on the river. And they can tell you that October 3rd, because it's really cold, there's nobody on the river. And they can actually look at some of that modeling, and they can also alert their public safety folks to when the river's too high, when the river's dangerous, and incident identification. One of the most interesting ones they were interested in is a scream. So if someone's screaming or yelling and thrashing in the water, they want to be notified of that. So these are the sorts of things that even a very, very small city can do. I don't know if that answers your question, but hopefully it does. Any other questions? Sure, go ahead.
A follow-up question on that then. So obviously, what we're doing here is we're sharing these kinds of ideas. Is there any other groups that are aware of what we're Golden and with us, where we can come together and share these kinds of ideas? Is there a network of these communities?
Well, what's interesting is I think this forum is really cool because you have brought in people from different municipalities and boroughs. Boroughs, is the right word? Okay. Around the area, so you're starting to look at what others are doing. There's a growing trend for a smart region approach, and this is starting to proliferate where a city is starting to take a lead, and then the surrounding communities say, well, we need to be doing this as a region and not just as a city. So one of the things I get to do next week is I get to go to the Smart Region Consortium that is in and around Phoenix and Tempe and ASU. What they've done is they've gotten the university, they've gotten the city of Phoenix, a number of other cities around there, and they've created this concept called the Smart Region. And they're trying to be one of the more innovative smart regions in the nation and trying to lead the way for others to follow. So it's going to be a very interesting set of meetings next week. We are a sponsor of this as Dell Technologies. We're very interested in it. And we have a leadership position within the Smart Region Consortium now in Arizona. So I think that the concept of smart regions is growing, and I think you guys have to start under here just by having this sort of meeting collaboration. Questions? Yes?
You talked about creating data stories.
Yes.
Just an example.
Yeah, a data story is looking at your data and trying to create a story around what does this data mean to us. So for the example of take San Jose, because we looked at traffic incident data and we looked at police incident data. What we looked at was police incident data by type. So it's very easy to say, where's our hotspots for police incidents? Well, that's probably Friday and Saturday night between 10 and 2. If you looked at all the police incidents, yeah, the hotspots for Friday and Saturday nights would be 10 and 2. Oh, great. What does this data do for us? Nothing. However, if you look at it by incident type, you break it down to, for example, an incident called auto theft. Auto theft doesn't happen Friday and Saturday nights between 10 and 2. It actually happens Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Those are the hot spots for auto theft. Think about it. You come out of your house in the morning, your car's not there, you call police, or out of work shopping and your car's not there, you call police. So it was interesting to see that data story was able to tell us more about how different types of incidents occurred in different times or days of the week. The other thing we looked at on the police one was what type of incidents are on the increase and which are on the decrease. And we noticed that there was one that was on the decrease, which was called vehicle stop. And in 2009 to 2010, they had a 50% reduction in vehicle stops. What would that be? People driving a lot better? No, it's not that. It's that there was a recession in 2009. They had to lay off some of their officers, so the remaining officers were not doing traffic duty anymore. They were doing, the more important things. So suddenly this vehicle stop became a story that the city could now say, well, because we didn't have enough police staff, we couldn't afford to monitor traffic as much as we were before. So it shows an outcome of that layoff. The other interesting line that we looked at was home alarms. So the incidence of alarms going off in people's houses was on a steady increase. Over the past 5 years, it had gone from X number on almost a linear line to the number of home alarms that were going off. So if you think about this from a police and a staffing point of view, if you know that this line to respond to all those home alarms, so how are you going to deal with that? And it gives you a visibility into where we're headed with, active home alarms, and maybe we need a separate group that responds to home alarms and not, the main police force, or maybe we don't respond to them unless there's a certain type of incident because most of them are false alarms. So it's that kind of data story that gives you that insight. Not quite the predictive modeling, but at least seeing where these trends are happening. Hope that answers your question. Yeah, cool.
Well, locally here, can we, two forums ago, did you do a presentation around the data that you were collecting for senior care and transportation? I think that's kind of a data story as well.
Oh, okay. We're always talking about.
Yeah, so, just like you were collecting data, as we solution to survey 123, basically did.
Really good contract.
Kind of stop and have it, but it's an optional form that they could fill out, let us know, people that need assistance, because we didn't have that before. We had locations for some of the senior housing, but not necessarily all the home care. So what we did is we set up a voluntary survey to go out to the public and start collecting that information. So this way, in a crisis situation, we knew the homes that our emergency responders need to go to because these people needed extra care in order to evacuate. And so, and I think in my head, I always think of because we're an Azure customer as well, with Dell customer, and we use story maps a lot. And so it's taking a lot of this information, and even like Chris here from planning, is taking some of those harder to read documents, right? We go out and have a plan done. It's 120 pages that really gives you an analysis of why maybe, or why we should or not do a project or do some kind of cold words or what have you, and making that easier and digestible through story maps or through data stories. So this way we're doing more data-informed decisions. I think the bigger thing I noticed the most in the borough is that it's getting the buy-in from the line levels and mostly the management and the other departments to see the value into some of these technologies. They've been doing the same thing for a long time. It works just fine. Why fix it? It's not broke, don't fix it. And I think it's in Alaska, it's unique is our budget situation right now is the borough is going to be impacted pretty heavily next year because of the school bond debt. So we're not probably going to, we did get half of it, and we had a surplus in order to cover that this time. We're not going to get the 18 million back. And so we're going to end up having to come up with that money, and it's going to come from the borough or from the taxpayers. And our assembly's already basically told to us that they're not going to the taxpayers for that money. And so it'll be an interesting landscape for us going forward, but I think data stories, story maps, and it's really for us is to kind of start changing the mindset of those internal departments, and we can do that through those, some good examples of what other communities are doing, and basically they want to see that ROI. I think Eric White asked about that. Is they want to see the return on investment, and how can they be more efficient. And I think story maps or these data stories would be great.
I would just say if there's projects that, those types of things, you're trying to get things off the ground, talking to me, talking to Ron Witt, talking to Rob, and Dell team, we've got a far reach, and you can go and look for those examples, try to help you get projects off the ground. Even if they're not Dell related, it's kind of hard because everything's kind of Dell.
Yeah, it's just another story too.
But let us know if we can see if we can help out.
So another story around data and efficiency comes from Amarillo, Texas, and they had a problem with response time. It was perceived by the community that you call the police and the police don't get there fast enough. So they started doing data analytics about what happens from when the call comes in, where it gets entered into their dispatch system, to where the police get the call, to where the police arrive on site. They wanted to figure out where the delays were in the process. Because the police were saying, as soon as we get the call, we're right there. So the delay had to be somewhere else in the process. And by using data analytics, by using Tableau to look at all the different data that they had, they actually found the problem. And the problem was when the dispatch person answered the phone call, they were supposed to fill out all the information before transmitting it to the CAD system for deployment. And they realized the majority of that time was spent 4 to 5 minutes on the phone where the agent was recording all the information before it was sent. The simple fix was to get the first piece of information, where, when, what, done. They then submit the dispatch to the police force, and then they start continuing to follow it, and they reduce their response time by 80% just by making that one change. And it was all based on the understanding of data. So another example of efficiency in data storage. Any other questions, comments? I love Anchorage. And my best day of golf here. I beat my brother for the first time ever. Yes. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rob. All right. Chris, are you on? He was hearing it, so. On the panel, huh?
Yeah, it's probably muted.
He was hearing us. Hi, Chris, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, perfect, okay. So this is Chris Knoll from the Denali Borough. So this is a quick update about something we talked about a couple years ago, I think now with MTA and Sierra Cantress. So, yeah, Chris, why don't you just go ahead and remind us the situation that you found yourself and where you're at right now.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. So a couple years ago, what started as an idea, here in the Denali Borough, we've got 80 miles of highway, starting right about mile 200 of Parks Highway. We've got 1,800 year-round residents. And, our main attraction is Denali National Park up here. And we found ourselves that local emergency planning committee made the recommendation to our borough assembly, hey, we need street addresses, official street addresses. And it's something most people take for granted, but we don't have street addresses. Oftentimes people using the 911 example, they'll use the person whose home they bought it from, or a historic name. This is just Miss Old House. That was how folks got both fire and law enforcement to their homes. And so the local emergency planning committee recommended to the assembly, they said, hey, we need official street addresses maintained by the borough. And through the Smart Community Forum, the Denali Borough connected with Matanuska Telephone Association, and it worked out where Matanuska Telephone Association, and we've also learned Golden Valley, they would like official street addresses as well. They've got kind of a data problem where. So we've partnered with MTA over the last 2 years, and MTA was able to task a couple high school interns on our project, and they created a rough draft of the address point layer and their computer-aided drafting software, and they were able to send that to the borough, and we use ArcGIS, and so our land planner was able to convert that to GIS data. And so we've got this rough draft, and we're well on our way to implementing street addresses. We have a couple more processes that we need to complete, including kind of updating our parcel layer, which hasn't been done in a few years, probably 8 to 10 years, as well as updating our street layer. But we're on track, and we hope to eventually roll out street addresses through some kind of application process where a homeowner would submit, probably, basically we try to send most people to they'd be all set. So yeah, it's going really well, and we really appreciate the help that Matanuska Telephone Association has provided you know, it's hard to put a value on the amount of work that those two interns put in, but it's been really helpful. And coincidentally, both interns have since gone on to college, one in Anchorage, one in Fairbanks, and we're going to try to continue to work with one or both of those guys to continue working on our project. That's all I got. Thank you for the time.
Any questions about what Denali and MTA are doing? It's been pretty hot to see a little bit more about it as well. So, Chris, I appreciate you taking a few minutes, and hopefully we can see you in person next time.
Yeah, thank you.
We're actually doing a presentation on smart communities, at AMI for all of AML folks up participating. So that's going to be kind of interesting for me, because I got to try to bring what I just saw just now and distill it into a village of 300 people. So I've been talking to Swamp City and SEC down the southeast, Kodiak, Kenai, as well as review some of this content from Union for Matthew Borough to try to make the smart community concept to a broader audience. And then we have our next forum, Feb 25. That's going to be at 3. I haven't seen anything about the survey mapping conference online.
It's not online, but there's a new name, Geofrontiers, but you can still Google specific mapping and release the controls.
Okay.
They haven't posted anything yet, but the reason they haven't posted anything is there was some code mapping out there from the April 6th to 8th.
Gotcha.
So don't feel like it's urgent and missing.
All right, so I'm so happy. I'm so happy that I grabbed the date that I did at DB Energy, because right now you can't grab the date until May. So yeah, it's a popular event.
We have the Dilemma Center, so lots of new things happening like that.
Right, awesome. So I got new information out there. Well, actually, so that date and the location is fixed?
Yes.
Okay.
April 6th
So
to 8th.
maybe you can shoot me that, and I can send a follow-up note on this one today. Okay. Oh, I know, and I'll make sure I read my notes before I send my email out. Other than things, any questions? A lot of really good
Just
content.
please make sure that you sign in on the roster, because that helps contact information.
Yeah, we want to make sure we have an accurate head count, because we're going to digitize that, map it out, we're going to have all your locations.
You know, actually, before I let you walk away from the spring conference, I think of this crowd and all the wonderful presentations that everybody does quarterly. You've all practiced your